Okay, guys, it looks like it's just a small group of us this morning, and that's okay. We'll go ahead and get started. I trust everyone is ready to go on this, second Wednesday of June, and we're in the throes or in the end of our second quarter. So, as you know, I always start with a moment of gratitude, and I like to give you guys a quote to kind of think about. Um, Let me find my quote. Hold on just a minute. Um, I just had it here. Hold on. So let's see. Where is my quote? All right, there we go. Share. There we go. Share. So the quote of the day for gratitude is find gratitude in the little things, and your well of gratitude will never run dry. So I know it's just a few of us on here, but would anyone like to speak up and share what they're grateful for this morning? Well, no worries if not. Just remember that I think if we take a moment each day to kind of reflect on what we're grateful for, a lot of times that helps us set our mood and our tone for the day and helps us get going. So there's that. Let's move to our stats real quick. So we have those updated. I'm going to share those with you as well so we can look at what the numbers are this morning. Let me You guys know I struggle with the share issue, so hold on just a minute. Let me get to our sharing. Let me get to the share slide with the stats. It's funny, I just had them up. That's what always happens with me, as you guys know. Let's see, and then I'm gonna go here. All right, so our stats. Hold on, it's because I have so many windows open. But our stats are looking good. If you think about, I'm going to pull them up here in just a minute. But if you think through a little bit of what we've been seeing, we're still seeing a drop, or not a drop, a huge increase in our price reductions each month. Guys, hold on. Sorry about that. Let me get to it. Price reductions are high, even in both areas. Can you see that? There we go. And share. Well, guys, I can't get them to pull up, so I'm going to skip that for a minute until I can figure that out. But our stats are showing that we are having, I pulled those up this morning, our price reductions are still extremely high. And we talk about this every week, about setting that tone, setting those conversations so that we are setting our clients up for success and making sure they understand if they're not pricing right off the bat, what that means for their sale of their home. So price reductions are still really high. I don't believe Charleston has their numbers updated yet. We don't have ours updated, but we will continue to share those with you, and we'll be sure to have those for you tomorrow. So let's move into the lesson today. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about these conversations that we're having, especially conversations around when we're meeting with our clients, when we are setting appointments. What does that look like? So I pulled out some trusty, as I always do, I pull out something from our playbooks, and this one is about strategies to know exactly what to say. And there are four big things that Phil Jones says that when you're getting started and you're having conversations that you need to prepare for. So the first one that he talks about, and we've talked about Phil Jones before, and I know looks like there's some new faces today, but Phil Jones is the author of Exactly What to Say, and he's really part of this bigger conversation that we've been having around in the KW ecosystem around, are we prepared when we have our conversations? So the first thing he says is to prepare for the recurring key moments in your life. And he says the worst time to think of what to say is the moment you need to say it, right? So you guys know me. You guys have seen me on here a few times. I'm typically really prepared, but I can't get my screen to share it this morning. But it's the preparation part, right? It's to know what you're going to say. He goes on to say, he explained that the key to knowing exactly what to say begins with understanding what the reoccurring key moments in your professional life are. Once you have them identified, you can develop a pantry of words to choose from ahead of time, right? So what he's saying there is preparation is key, but also he's like, identify the key moments that we have in our real estate career. So let's stop for a minute and think about that. And let's see if anybody would like to participate. What conversations can you prepare for on a regular basis that you know that you're going to have in your real estate profession?
When someone says, "How's the market?"
Thanks, Jillian. So when someone says how the market, how do you prepare for a conversation around that? And let's brainstorm that for a minute. So if you're networking, you're at a kid event, you are at a true networking event, what happens or what are you prepared to say when someone asks you, how's the market? So what's that conversation look like? Well, part of that is going to be, they're going to want to know, typically they're going to ask about lender rates, maybe. They're going to ask about, are we in a buyer's market or a seller's market? They're going to ask how quickly homes are selling. They're going to ask something around, they're going to ask around our houses selling, what's the inventory maybe? So they're going to have some questions for you. So if you know that that's coming, that's part of us sharing these stats with, is that you are ready with a few key talking points to be ready to talk. But if you think largely, and that was a really good one, Jillian, but what else are we doing in our professional life that we can prepare our conversation? And I think you can think around it about the systems or about the kind of clients we have. So you know you're going to have your buyer consultation. Are you prepared for that conversation? You know that you will have a seller consultation. Are you prepared for that conversation? And it's not so much the script practice, but it's more about, are you ready for those questions? Are you ready to start asking the right questions to get to where your clients are going? Okay, so that's the first one. Prepare for the reoccurring key moments in your life. Think through what are the repetitive or the reoccurring conversations that you have as a real estate agent with your clients, with your team, and with others. Okay, the second one is ask questions on the front end to avoid problems on the back end. He says questions are the fuel to a good conversation. Mainly the sales process he says Phil uses questions mainly in the sales process to uncover the why behind someone's actions. When problems arise, you bring people back to their why to help them power through adversity. So in real estate, and when you're working with a client, the why is really what? What's the why when you're talking to your clients? It's really their motivation. So when you are having these consultations with your clients, it is key that you get to the motivation. You get to the reason why they need to buy or the reason to sell. That is the same thing as their why. And you really need to make sure that you are honing in on that and asking the question so that you are able to bring that back when things kind of possibly derail in the transaction, to remind them what their motivation was to sell or their motivation to find a home. In the chat, Lori, you can always come off mute and chime in. Yeah, the reason to why they want to move, right? Their why is their reason to either why they have to sell or to why they have to buy. And you really need to make sure that it's not always just surface that that they're a looky-loo or they just really think that they need a house. You really need to hone in on that pain point so that you can make sure that you are doing your fiduciary duty, but also getting them to the finish line. Okay, so that's the second one. On his third point is be intentional in the first 15 seconds of a conversation. The first 15 seconds of a conversation are crucial. This is when you're making a first impression and setting the tone for the rest of the interaction. Phil Jones uses 3 frameworks to start any conversation: a genuine compliment, sincere recognition, or the request of an opinion. So a genuine compliment, a sincere recognition, or the request of an opinion. These frameworks help him to join the other person's story or to invite them into his. So what are some examples of in a business relationship and a real estate relationship where you can either provide a genuine compliment and sincere recognition or request of an opinion? Latricia says, I was going to say it depends on the motivation of the buyer or seller. True, that's right. So, but again, when you're going in, I think Phil is saying that you need to do this in the first 15 seconds. So you may be having to make this good impression before you even know their motivation. If you're doing a good job, and we've talked about this, if you're doing a good job on setting the appointment, during that intake or that intake conversation with the appointment set, that's also the time where you can maybe already know the motivation so that when you meet them in person, it's a different kind of first impression. But let's say that you don't know the motivation and you walk in for a listing appointment. What is something that you can do to either provide a genuine compliment, sincere recognition, or a request for an opinion as soon as you sit down with your in the kitchen with your prospective seller?
Meredith, you can compliment them on how they have the house decorated.
Yep, yep. Yep, Lori, I like that. So can compliment them on the house is decorated. Just make sure that doesn't come and bite you back in case you need them to stage. But yes,
Oh yeah,
for sure.
even if they need work on the house.
That's right. So you come right in. Mark, were you going to say something?
I was gonna say from the buyer side, just compliment any kind of homework they've done, any kind of research they've done, comment on the fact that, clearly you know what you're looking for, or at least a basis of what you're looking for. You've done some research on the market, it's great working with an informed buyer like you.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Because as we know, buyers are showing up more and more prepared. So to come right out and just recognize that, I think that's huge. Sincere recognition. So Mark gave us an example of sincere recognition. What about a request on an opinion? What could you do with a buyer or a seller for a request of an opinion?
Ask them what their thoughts are on the house and sit back and listen. Don't talk.
Yes, I love that, Lori. So sit back and listen. Ask questions. Dig deeper. Ask them why they're selling. Ask them what they or ask them that goes right to motivation. Don't ask that. Ask them, about their home, what they think the best features are of their home, what they think are maybe even the problems with their home. Ask them those types of questions so you can get in and make sure you're building that level of trust. So again, the third one is be intentional in the first 15 seconds of a conversation. And if you think about it, 15 seconds seems quick, but that can be long. I mean, you guys see me struggle every week trying to figure out how to share a screen. So 15 seconds can be long, but it's also a time for you just to delve in and to get that first impression made. The last point he made was work on 3 critical conversations at any given time. As mentioned above, it's important to focus on 3 critical conversations, one in your personal life, one in your role as a leader, and one that's going to put money in your pocket. By working on 3 conversations, you'll be prepared to handle any situation that comes your way. You'll also be able to build stronger relationships and achieve your goals more quickly. So in this effort, he's saying not only do you focus professionally, focus in your personal life, but also something that puts money in your pocket. But if we were going to keep this just to real estate, what would be 3 conversations that you would know that you want to have at least kind of a general run through in your head of what that script looks like? What would those be for you? Well, I have one. So go ahead. Who's going to talk? Lori?
I know, Robin.
Hey, Robin.
Hi. I was going to say, just knowing, like looking at the SAMS report in MLS every day will give you some talking points, knowing what like just being prepared to talk about the interest rates, how many days houses are on the market, just having those in the front of your mind and knowing your statistics can give you the talking points.
Love that. Yep. And typically we have those stats for you to share so that yes, but exactly. Have some stats ready. Be ready to talk about what's going on in the market. So that's one. You want to have a conversation in your head or at least a framework of a conversation so that you can talk about the market. Okay, what are 2 more conversations that are good for you to have in your pocket and ready to chat about?
Also, information from lenders or loan officers on what programs are available right now for people who have not gotten qualified, and make sure that they do before you even show them a house.
Yeah. If you're comfortable with talking lender rates and if you've got the experience there, for sure. Lori's got experience, and so she can jump right in and understand what's going on truly in our mortgage industry within like the Charlotte area. So yeah, love that. Have that conversation. What's another one?
I'm not sure if it's really like a get ready ahead of time, but in your mind, know the questions like you're saying that you have to ask, like why they're looking to move, what their time frame is, what we need to do to meet that time frame, and
Yeah.
what they're looking for, like why they're, like you said, why they're moving, but basically their motivation and how quickly they need to make that happen. Because if they need to move quickly, we gotta get on it.
Right. Great. I love that. These are really specific, but I think, and I love all of those examples, but I also think if you move back and think through, there are an appointment setting conversation. We talk about that. So how do you set an appointment? So make sure that you have that kind of and we can, and I plan on for the following Wednesdays, just so that you know, we're going to do a lot more script practice in these conversations for the lead generation part. But as we're thinking through the 3 conversations, one is about setting the appointment, making sure that you can get in front of your client. The other one is generally if you have a buyer consultation script or something that you have to, something that you follow, that you understand just a general framework of how that conversation is going. So buyer consultation, so that you know what Lori was getting at with motivation, the why. Remember, we have to know the why. We have to know some general talking points, or not general talking points, but some general information you want to gather. So that's one. So there's buyer consultation, there's a seller consultation. That's a conversation that you should have a general framework of how you want that to go. I would even say that when you get through, I know there's not well, there's some due diligence in South Carolina, but get to the negotiations conversation. How do you, what's the framework that you use there? So in my mind, there are at least 4 general high level scripts or flows that you can kind of figure out. The appointment setting, a buyer consultation, a seller consultation, and then when you get to the negotiation part, right? Does anybody have any questions or thoughts on that? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
I was gonna say too, like sometimes when I've run into people and like they're like toying with buying, sometimes asking them like, well, tell me like if like I understand you're not like ready today, because a lot of times that's what they'll say. But if tell me what if I could find the perfect house, like what would that be that would make you want to go and buy that house? What does that look like to get them talking into and telling you what those needs are?
Yeah, yeah. So let's start with, so if we're going to talk about a buyer consultation, we already know that the first thing we have 15 minutes to make a good impression. So we're going to start with a compliment, sincere recognition, or some kind of request for an opinion. You're going to then go to trying to ask enough questions to get to their true motivation and document that so you can bring that back or take note of it, or make sure you remember what is their true motivation. Then, as Robin or Laura, I think it was Robin who just said, that get to what their needs and wants are. Make sure that you are having a list of those. And so this is just something, again, for preparation, so that you're not necessarily winging it. But there are a few key things that you have to make sure you have a general understanding of. Make a first impression, get their motivation as for a buyer, and gets their wants and needs, so that you can be the best fiduciary that you can be. So there's like a general framework there for you. What about on the seller side? What kind of framework are we looking if you're going into a listing appointment? What is it that you need to do when you first come in? We already know first impression, get to their motivation. Then what?
Let them be quiet and let them talk about their house, and let them take you around and show you their home. First thing I like to do is, before I even sit down and kind of go through that, is say, how about taking me, show me around, show me your entire house, and I'm going to take notes, or I usually record it. Just so I have pictures, everything.
Yeah, great. So it's before you even sit down, you're getting a general tour of the house just so they can tell you all about it, and you're paying attention there. So
Yeah,
that's
and when walking around, I compliment them on things I see. That way, it makes me feel like I really love their home, and they know why I don't be the one to sell it.
right.
Also asking them why they bought their house, what made them fall in love with it. Because if they can tell you why they bought it and what attracted them to it, it will tell you what will attract others to it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So again, like if it's the neighborhood, if it's the school system, if it's the commute to for us, is it the commute to uptown Charlotte, whatever it may be. The point is, we're kind of, again, laying out a framework that you can generally follow, so that you know that you want to hit these 4 or these 5 areas of in a conversation. So that's the buyer consultation, the seller consultation framework. What about a framework, with the last few minutes? What about a framework around setting an appointment? What does that look like?
When's the most convenient time for you? I can try to work in my schedule.
You've been Zillow trained. Yeah, exactly. Well, that's one way to go right in. So you go right into setting the appointment. That works sometimes. There are also times when you're working with a lead that maybe you don't know that you've got to build that relationship. So remember that conversation is, again, you've got to come in with from an area of value where you're providing something more than just trying to buy, sell, or help them invest in something, right? It is a conversation where you're trying to build that relationship. So for the next few Wednesdays, I'm going to pull out some cards. There's some, Phil Jones has an exactly what to say deck of cards. And a lot of it has to do with either what questions you may get in a real estate transaction and how we can work through those. Because again, I think as we are in a market where we have to focus so much more on building relationships versus, they come in and they're ready to go, but building the relationships so that you can keep them in your pipeline. What are those conversations? What are those questions that you are asking to start building that relationship to get them to either be clients or to get them to the closing table faster? Okay, so it's 8:55. Does anybody have any other questions or anything they want to chat about before I give you 5 minutes back to your Wednesday morning? Okay, well, I appreciate your time. Tomorrow you will have Reverend Cohn. He will be here talking about buyers, and next week you will see us again. So happy Wednesday and have a good week. Bye.
Thanks, Meredith.